Oh, honey, let's just go a little bit more. We know we can do it, and the bank doesn't give a fuck. They'll just approve anything. Oh, God, I just find this so funny because it's such a fucked up situation. The Canadian housing market is crashing. Once a safe haven is now a collapsing market where home prices have recently hit a 4-year low. And we're going to get into the data behind this crash and all the areas that are being affected here. Even areas that you were told, oh, these are the places that you've got to move to, like Calgary. You're going to be so safe in Calgary, they told you. And now even Calgary is falling apart. So anyway, let's start off with Toronto. Annex and Yonge and St. Clair just saw prices plunge 32% year over year and 21% month over month. And this is the bleeding that you are seeing happening because the markets are so illiquid and there's very few sales that are going on. And then I just want to go over a couple of losses here before we get into the hard data here. And this is another one, a 20% loss in just 26 months, just over 2 years. And you've lost 20%, $350,000. These are the type of losses that you are seeing in the Canadian housing market crash. And then even Calgary. Oh my God, the government told me to move to Calgary, Luke. Why? Why would the government do this to me? Don't trust the government. How many times have I said, don't trust the government? I don't care if it's Danielle Smith, Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, Pierre. I don't care. Don't trust any of them because they are going to lead you down the garden path. Trust me. So this house in Calgary sold for $494,000 in October 2024. Obviously, Halloween was then. That's why I put that pumpkin. Anyway, 7 months later, 10% gone. So 7 months and you have seen 10% gone.
Our economy is very strong.
And there are going to be all these people once again in Calgary who bought a peak market, who moved to Calgary, saying the exact same thing that I heard stories of when I lived there. And I moved there obviously during the bust, and there were all these people who were stuck in houses, who overpaid, who moved to Calgary. Many of them had lost jobs and had to find other jobs and were just scraping by. And it was a real sad story. And we've just seen the whole thing repeat, essentially. I mean, talk about doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I mean, it's just fucking crazy. It really is. So I always like to talk about the history in Calgary because home values in Calgary have always been questionable. So these people, they can't say that they didn't know that this was coming because, I mean, you just have to look at history. So in 9 years, this house has gained 20%. So it hasn't outpaced even the CP lie at 29%. So it's got a net loss over 9 years of 9%. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. But these are the type of losses that you see in places like Calgary and Edmonton, and they're going to be stacking up over the next couple of years. This house in a commuter town near Calgary sold for $745,000 in July of 2024. Someone bid over the asking price to secure the place. What a great idea that probably seemed at the time. Oh, honey, let's just go a little bit more. We know we can do it, and the bank doesn't give a fuck. They'll just approve anything. Oh, God, I just find this so funny because it's such a up situation. Anyway, they just sold for an 8% loss.
Our economy is very strong.
They bought a year ago, guys, and 8% gone. And this ain't an apartment. It's not a townhouse. It's a single family home. This is what every person wants to own in Canada, a single family home. And it just sold for an 8% loss in Cochrane, not cock as in, oh God, you've got a dirty mind, I know. So anyway, it just goes to show what is happening there in Calgary. And now I want to show you this quick story. This DM was sent to me by a mortgage broker. Banks are repossessing homes in Niagara Falls. Two cleaners told her sister that they do 30 to to 40 homes a week, all under power of sale. So you've got to ask the question, are the banks hiding a lot of these power of sale listings, a lot of these foreclosures? And the answer is yes. They don't want you to know that it's a power of sale, or they don't want you to know that it's a foreclosure. So yeah, they do actually definitely do that. And obviously this is what you're seeing happen in Niagara Falls. Quietly relisting defaults. The cracks are already in motion. We weren't supposed to notice. And then this is the text that Shazzy got. I won't read the whole things, but the bank repossessed her house and sent in a team of cleaners, and they're doing 30 to 40 homes a week. So it just goes to show what's going on. And if you have any stories like this, then send away. You know where to go. Links are in the description. So destination average freehold price in the GTA is now lower than 2021, and we just went through our busiest season. John's talking about nominal prices there as well, so you've got to add in inflation, and people have been destroyed. They have just been picked up by their hair and dragged through the mud of their yard to be tossed out onto the curb.
Our economy is very strong.
People are sitting on these huge losses, whether they realize it in nominal terms or they don't. And then when you add in inflation, it just gets even worse. This chart is a funeral. We're going to get into it in a minute. Canadian home prices are now down 17.5% since 2022. And I would slap on at least another 20% of inflation since 2022. So that makes you sat at what? 37.5%. A market that is down 37.5%. And people are still saying, there's no crash. There's no housing market crash in Canada. You're fear-mongering. How dare you? And just look at the data. It cannot be denied. Home prices are collapsing, and we'll get into the condo collapse in a separate video, because that is a whole different conversation to have, because home prices are just falling off a cliff here in Canada, and clearly you can see it on this chart. But one thing that chart doesn't even show you is they would be down here if they included inflation, because the reality is you add in that inflation and it looks even worse. So the time of just being basically flat, prices are actually going down because inflation hasn't stopped. It's carried on going and compounded at higher rates. So Canadian real estate prices fall to lowest level in 4 years. So this is what we're talking about here. So this chart, Canadian home prices are down from their peak in February 2022. And I just want to add to this, the pin that pricked this bubble was not tariffs. I mean, tariffs weren't even in discussion back in February 2022. So nobody can say, oh, the tariffs destroyed the Canadian housing market. It was Donald Trump. It was Donald Trump. At least Donald Trump says what he thinks.
When you consider what Mr. Carney just said, that Canada is not for sale, does this make the discussion a little more difficult to start on?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, time will tell. It's only time. But I say, never say never.
Instead of people like Mark Carney, who just lie to your face consistently and constantly.
Our economy is very strong.
But anyways, so February 2022, they only hiked like 25 or 50 basis points. And I think the overnight rate was less than 1% back then. And you've currently got rates at 2.75%. You've got the Royal Bank of Canada that's saying no rate cuts are coming now for the rest of 2025. And people are saying it's all interest rates. Again, all interest rates. Explain that narrative, because interest rates have been going down and prices have been going down. Is it tariffs? Again, explain that narrative, because you can't explain that narrative. It's more about the economy and sentiment. So if you want to know where home prices are moving in the future, don't look at all these experts that they claim they are who go on to these financial media interviews. Instead, just think about where the economy is headed in 2025 and 2026. And if you think it's going to a good place and you think things are going to get substantially better, then yes, you might see home prices that start to rise. And whether they actually start to outpace inflation is another thing, because I don't think they will. And then Toronto area new home sales are now worse than they were during during the 1990s housing market crash. I mean, I cannot believe these things are coming true. I mean, I really can, because I actually predicted them like 3 years ago. You guys probably remember when the yield curve inverted as bad as it did during the 1990s. There was some schmuck on YouTube that was saying, yeah, I wonder what could be this big thing in Canada which could possibly get as bad as the 1990s. And obviously, it's the financial system because of the debt, because of the housing bubble. So if you wanted insider information from the banks about how bad this is about to get in terms of a recession, in terms of a depression, then you need to listen in. It's like a window into the banking system to see that large financial institutions like banks, they think bad times are ahead. And depending on how extreme it gets, depends on how bad it's going to get. So if you look at this, the spread, the blue line is way above the orange line. The spread is quite large, as you can see. It's way larger than in 2020, it's way larger than in 2007, and it's much larger than in 2000, where it barely inverted, just like in 2007. But if we go back to 1987, you can see that it got seriously inverted, and this is where things get really gnarly for what's coming in the Canadian financial system. Because if you go back and you look at the failures of banks during that period of time between around 1987 to around 1996, and I've got it right here on this website, you can see that pretty much half of the failures. So if you look at this list, you can see that easily half of the banking failures that have happened in Canada occurred during that period of time. So it's absolutely crazy, but here we are. So listen to this. New home sales in the Toronto area marked a 7th consecutive month of record all-time lows, eclipsing the 1990s downturn when the housing market crashed. So did the housing market not crash now then? I don't know, because no experts want to call it a housing market crash. Have you noticed that? Where have you seen the headlines that the housing market is crashing in Canada? You just haven't, even though it is. And it's happening right now. People just don't seem to understand. During the 1990s housing crash, which lasted roughly from 1989 to 1996, and again, that is key because it's 7 years long and we're in 2025 now, 3 years on from the peak, so we could have another 4 years at least to go, or at worst, if you're Japan, it could be another 15, 16, 17 years in reality. So that just goes to show. Anyway, which lasted roughly from 1989 to 1996, at the bottom of the market, there were 6 consecutive months of record low sales, and the sales were around double what they are today. And I mean, adjust that to the amount of inventory and the amount of units that you have in the market today, and that is just a baffling statistic on its own. There were 302 new home sales in April, down 72% from April 2024 and 89% below the 10-year average. Historically, new home sales for a typical April in the GTA would be 2,750 units based on the previous 10-year average. So again, you are seeing the housing market crash in Canada that is worse than the 1990s crash now, and it only took 3 years from the 2022 peak to get to this. And this is part of the reason. I mean, invisible poor, middle income households making up to 125,000 annually getting squeezed out of the GTA. So more and more people just can't afford to live in that area of the country, and that area of the country anyway is a dystopia. It's the worst part of Canada. The GTA, honestly, if people said to me, where is the worst place in Canada, I would say the Greater Toronto area, because it's a shithole. I feel bad for people who live there. I've lived there. I know what it's like, and it is horrible. I had to drive all over the city in that shitty traffic, and that was like 7 years ago. So God knows what it's like today. It must be terrible. So Calgary drops to 18th among most livable cities in the world. I mean, this isn't surprising. I don't even believe any of these bullshit reports anyway. And this is no real surprise from a place that literally saw snow the other week in June. I mean, it's not unheard of. The probabilities are pretty high for snow in September and snow in May, and snow in June is not unheard of as well. And I mean, to drop to 18th, most of them were citing healthcare there, which I would agree with, because the healthcare is not the best in Canada, as most people know, especially in the major cities, because people just can't get the access to the care. But you've also got to remember there are things like pollution from wildfires. I mean, Calgary is in like literally the prevailing winds from any of the wildfires go straight into Calgary. So it's just in smoke a lot of the summer. And then that coupled with the very long winter, is that really a nice place to live? And then it also has one of the highest unemployments in Canada. It's not the place of economic prosperity like is advertised by the propaganda that's out there. But again, it's not surprising. And I think most of these reports are bullshit anyways, and I've called them out because Vancouver was on that list above Calgary, and Vancouver is literally a zombie land. It's like scenes from a zombie land apocalypse movie. And then, do you need 1.54 million or 2.1 million to retire? I mean, by the time people who are in their 40s are retiring, they're probably going to need more like $5 million. With inflation, state pensions aren't cutting it right now for people who are retiring. That's why they're going abroad. So it's looking even worse for the future. But the reason why I highlighted this is because with the collapsing housing market in Canada and many Canadians relying solely on their home equity, hoping to downsize, who's going to buy their house? Because nobody can afford to buy these houses that most of these people live in. So how are they going to downsize? Like, it's not going to work. And also that home equity is being evaporated as well in this crash. So they're getting less and less of their retirement if that's what they're relying on. So again, it's just a real nightmare, unfortunately, for people retiring reliant on fixed income. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I highly recommend that you check out this video here. And then if you're looking for a VPN and also want to help support the channel, use the VPN that I use, ExpressVPN. Links are in the description. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.